Today on Solutions Over Problems, this episode's going to be on veterans' mental health. I'm a veteran, which is why my videos have so many edits, because the words that veterans use to replace are typically not allowed for YouTube. Some habits die hard. Basically, this is going to be how military service has impacted your ability to perceive yourself, and how we're going to try and shift that focus a little bit today. And then we're going to be talking about some things that may be more structural in recent research that came out than necessarily what's going on in your head, more what's going on because of the bruising in your head. The first thing they generally teach people in the military is, or it was back in the day, is this high critical nature of a sense of urgency, be on time, right uniform, right place, right time, etc., etc. And those that don't conform are easy to identify. And we become proficient in identifying what doesn't conform. And what doesn't conform in the military becomes a problem. We develop an outstanding ability to assess weaknesses in ourselves and in others. And that is in relation to the team, so that everyone is carrying their equal load and no one is deviating to a degree that is going to cause someone else to carry their load. This becomes a problem after people separate, if they do not find a productive outlet to utilize this skill. And in a previous video, we talked about how belonging is the opposite of isolation. And when you don't have a team to assess yourself against, or a standard to assess yourself against, and you've been trained to assess for weakness or shortcomings, you become a team of one, because the military's gone, no one else is there, it's just you. So we begin to assess that all of the problems are just occurring to me. And then the assessment is that you are the weakness of the team, or some variation of that. But what we were never taught well to do in the military is to assess for strengths, because everything was modeled under the doctrine. You have to recalibrate from thinking of yourself as the one-man team and being the weakness of the one-man team as being the best player on the one-man team. Like, if you're the bad dog and the good dog in your head, the one you feed is going to get stronger. You're going to have to reframe these things until you learn to stop looking for the weakness within yourself and look for the strengths. Now that you're a civilian, or even if you're still in the service, no one really cares what you're not good at, okay? A carpenter doesn't get asked to weld, okay? You don't have to be good at everything. You need to be good at one thing, good enough to sustain your lifestyle. That's it. That's all it takes. Everything else you can hire someone for. You need to identify the things that you perform exceptionally well at, that you have an exceptional value at, and stop caring about the things that you don't do well, and pour more energy and time into the things that you do well. There's not enough time in a day for you to go through a checklist every day to assess for the skills that you are not proficient in. And it is not useful. So we're going to assess for strengths, perform to strengths, and then assess yourself on progress rather than perfection. Progress is the objective. There's a saying that sometimes veterans, they miss the clowns but not the circus of the military. And that still rings true for a lot of people, especially veterans, especially GWAT guys. And the thing is you can still have the clowns, and you don't have to take the circus back. No one wants to be doing staff duty on Thanksgiving Day, okay? No one does. But you need to find the clowns that you get to smile and laugh with. The world is a horrible place. We don't need to find another reason why it's horrible. You just need to find one reason to get out of bed and have a good day. And find the clowns that make your day better and give you a laugh. So that's the beginning of this solution and problem. But we have some other things to talk about that might be getting in the way of finding the clowns. We all need to think better of ourselves and for ourselves. And that's how that reassessing you being the best player on the team is. And some barriers we have to that are, one is primarily alcohol. Alcohol is a substance that reduces your mind's control of saying no to things. This is called inhibition. And alcohol is an inhibition inhibitor. You become more susceptible to thoughts under the influence of alcohol. And that's why your risk factor on alcohol gets skewed heavily, because people are not inhibiting the risks that they're willing to take. And that leads to guys taking excessive risk or downplaying risk related to alcohol, or staving off perceptions of themselves that they otherwise could sober, but is difficult to stave off while drinking. Let's avoid that. The second thing is to avoid the environments that are self-defeating or not creating peace in your life. We just talked about finding the clowns you can laugh with, right? Well, we also don't want to make a picnic with Satan either. You want to find the clowns, but let's not make a dinner table for demons either. And this is going to be a case-by-case basis of what people find relaxing or having a good time with. But you have to learn to draw the line on when people are taking your peace. You don't want to become so self-isolated that you kind of sink into that despair again, but you also have to know when a relationship isn't benefiting you anymore. And that's going to be for all of you to find on your own, unfortunately. If you were in the combat arms, like I was, you were probably around some less than desirable events for, say, long-term longevity. So there's been some research that's been done, and I'm horrible about names, but there's probably a severe amount of underreported traumatic brain injuries in U.S. service members. I mean, just airborne school by itself is going to wreck you, let alone jump status. These traumatic brain injuries have a tendency to not be given enough time to properly heal, and some of that's for military operations, but so on and so forth. But you probably have TBIs, okay? I have neurooptometry concussion glasses, and it is because my coordination is not good if I don't wear them. See if you guys can see this. The test is you touch your nose, and as fast as possible, try and touch your other finger, and you'll see that I don't really do that well. I actually got a pretty good run. And typically, if you are to the right of whatever you're trying to touch, or right and low, and you've been around explosions and getting knocked out and jumping out of perfect good airplanes and all that kind of stuff, congratulations. You may need some concussion glasses. They take some getting used to. So TBI, concussions. Breacher syndrome is this new concussion thing where the blast wave of a breaching charge, or just explosions, basically pass through your skull as you are conducting explosive breaching. And it basically only adds to your cup. And it's very difficult for your cup to be emptied. And this is where you kind of get into, in boxing, they'll call these guys punch drunk. So that's where you start talking like Mike Tyson. Muay Thai fighters will start slowing their speech down. If you could pull up a Muay Thai fighter on his first day in a professional match and the day that he retires, and you can measure that his speech is slower. And it's just getting punch drunk. And these brain injuries are really, really hard to treat effectively. Because concussion protocols everywhere suck, including the NFL's, which is just literal garbage. And like linemen on NFL teams, how many of those guys have we seen spiral out? I mean, they're taking a lot of hits. I mean, more than U.S. military people to the head every day, NFL linemen. And ultimately, this leads to what is known as concussive traumatic encephalopathy. Couldn't remember the name of it for a second. It's CTE, and Will Smith has a movie about it. And it explains that these repeated concussive episodes eventually cause bruising between the layers of your brain. So you could begin to have like the tip of the tongue sensation when you know the word but you can't say the word, but you could have that tip of the tongue sensation in your brain. And that is, you know that you know it, but you can't think of it, versus you actually remembering the word and having a difficulty saying it. And that's just vis-a-vis. So what they're starting to find with these concussive traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, I'm just going to call it CTE from now on, is that there is an extremely high correlation of PTSD to soldiers with CTE. Extremely high. I think it was like over 80%. And there's this Asian dude, I shouldn't say Asian dude. He's an Asian doctor, and he's doing slices of people's brains from concussions, and he was using veterans' brains versus people who got in car accidents where their cars were totaled. And all of the people who had CTE also had PTSD in his research. And the people who had cars that were totaled in car crashes had nearly no CTE. So it's not whiplash of the brain. It's more of the direct concussion to the skull is more what these articles were saying, if I could remember them, which, sorry, I am talking about stuff that I read probably 8 months ago. I can't pull these articles for you. I think it's 60 Minutes did an interview with this guy, the Asian researcher. And so there's just a high level of that going on. So for adaptations to increase your focus, or etc., I want you, if you can, download a bionic reader, and it changes the font of individual words that you are reading, and it decreases the amount of time that you get distracted from reading because it keeps you moving through the reading. It's an ADHD tool, but with the concussions, with the decreased speech rate and like basically decreased speed of thought, you're going to need to be able to connect your dots faster in your thought processes. And bionic reading is a good way to basically recover a high word per minute reading rate. I generally listen to everything now rather than read, just because it's headaches and whatnot. Creatine, yeah, it's for brains now, apparently, not just muscles. You want to watch your level on this? There's some conflicting levels of doses, and basically what I'm doing is 3 grams a day of creatine for neurocognitive maintenance. I don't know if it's going to improve anything, but hey, I don't want to lose any more. But in the event that you want to try and get something back, there is a New Orleans doctor who won a Da Vinci Award for hyperbaric oxygen treatment. This is where if you have claustrophobia or an autoimmune disease, you can just scratch this off your list. So we were talking about how the CTE is hard to allow to heal. And that is because the cellular perfusion necessary for healing in the brain has a lot of barriers to overcome. I'm not going to talk to you guys about that stuff. But what we can do is lock you in a tank and increase the pressure of the atmosphere to 3 to 4 psi. So generally you want to do like a cognitive performance test before you begin this treatment. And then you're going to do these lock-ins in this hyperbaric oxygen chamber. The timelines are pretty much 1 hour, but sometimes they bump them up pretty long. And what we're what they aim to do is create enough oxygen to reach the end distal tissues to create and promote healing. This is done for osteomyelitis of diabetes patients, and they typically have better wound care. Granted, those people, never mind, not gonna go there. I wouldn't go to diabetes mellitus, hyperbaric oxygen tanks, trying to heal your brain. Understand that healing your brain has a very limited effect. You're not gonna become head of the debate club, okay? It's just not happening. We decided to run around the world and jump out of planes and shoot at people in the mountains. From what I understand is the benefit is pretty much tapers off at 3 to 4 treatments a week and 21 rounds in total. And then you want to repeat your cognitive assessment to see how you did there post-treatment. This New Orleans doctor was using this to primarily use HBOT to treat PTSD. But now in the data that we're finding out that CTE has such an overrun of PTSD, there could be confounded data between the two sets of what was actually being healed, if it was psychological or physiologically structural being healed. And honestly, I don't care. So, if it helps, it helps. And if it doesn't, it's 21 hours of your life. Pretty sure that doctor used to be at LSU, down in New Orleans. I forget his name too. Just Google New Orleans Da Vinci doctor for hyperbaric oxygen. Pretty sure you'll find him. There are some other things that others have testified to working. I mean, even the owner of Black Rifle Coffee Company has gone down there and done this, and pretty sure Sean Ryan's gone down there and done this. But in Mexico, they have ayahuasca clinics. And the working theory in ayahuasca is it increases your neuroplasticity to allow your brain to rewire itself and allow new memories to be healed. I have seen plenty of subjective feedback that it's helpful. I have not seen enough hard data, which I'm a super hard data kind of person. So it's hard for me to jump on the bandwagon for that. And there have been bad outcomes. I don't want to tell you what those outcomes are because they are hallucinogenic. And there's some research that says that speaking about these negative hallucinations could influence their presence after the ayahuasca treatment. So I'm not going to tell you what it is, or if you can find it on your own. That's your own prerogative, but there are on occasions, and to what degree I do not know, that there are negative outcomes of ayahuasca. Ketamine. So there's a therapy protocol called guided imagery of basically traumatic events. And once you have done these exposure therapies well enough, and you're going to come to a point where it's not going to be beneficial. They're beneficial. There's not going to be any further gains to be had. And a next step in a guided imagery exposure could be a ketamine-assisted exposure therapy. This is for PTSD, depression. Oh, and the ayahuasca thing is like PTSD, depression too. So there's a lot of hard data around this, but there's I'm not allowed to do this because of blood pressure. And I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to do hyperbaric lock-in because other stuff that I have going on with me. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure if you've ever had spine surgery, you can't have hyperbaric oxygen treatment. Or you'd have to wait a really long time due to compression and re-expansion of oxygen bubbles in your body. I don't know. Just, it isn't worth the risk for me. If it helps you, hey man, take the road I can't. And then there's a final one, which if you have depression that has not resolved from a lot of therapies, there's a process called TMS, or targeted magnetic stimulation. And you're basically stimulating neural connections in your brain to create more pathways. You're awake for this. It's like a clicking noise. You can talk to people while you're there. Sometimes it'll cause like twitching or like musculature contractions in your body, and everybody describes it as tapping. So it's not painful, and I mean, you're awake because I've talked to individuals who were having it done to them while they were sitting in the chair. Granted, they're fairly strapped in, so to speak, is to not move their head, not the rest of their body, just mainly their head. And I like the numbers on this pretty good. This is more for depression, but there are other, we'll say, antique treatments that I prefer less. And I'm not going to tell you what those are. I think a lot of guys have this concussions, microconcussions, breacher syndrome, punch drunk, CTE, and it's been, how do you say, that thought just flew away. Whatever that was. And the first step is like acknowledging something may not be right, which majority of guys I know that something isn't right, but they don't know what it is. And they're trying to solve the puzzle themselves, except the puzzle is a jigsaw puzzle and every piece is white. You know, they didn't teach us those when they were teaching us maneuvers. So it's not on you guys for knowing something is wrong and not knowing what it is. So here are some of the things that, I recommend to people, and hopefully I've been able to, fill in the center of the puzzle a little bit for you and give you a place to start from. And not everybody's treatment or journey on this stuff is gonna be the same, because not everybody got rocked the same way. I was picked up and carried by 4 people one time, and I don't know how long I was out for. It's like when you get your bell rung, like, yeah, for you to be out for multiple minutes, it's and to be woken up to people carrying you, it'll ring your bell, man. But this isn't a do all of these things kind of checklist. The main thing I want you guys to start doing is think better of yourselves for yourselves, and recognize that you are the best team member of your team. You can pick and choose from this stuff as needed, and you can go from there. I'm pretty sure this New Orleans doc, if he's still doing it, he used to do PTSD hyperbaric oxygen for free for veterans. Pretty sure that was through the LSU school there too. And hopefully you guys can find a way to laugh at yourself a little bit about it, and find some clowns around you that help you laugh about everyday life. Wish you guys the best. If anyone deserves to relax and grow old in this place, the ones who did the fighting for it. So don't be so hard on yourself. You clocked in more hours than any civilian would do. You probably did it for over a year.